Thank you, Salim Ho, for this warm welcome. First of all, I want to acknowledge and call you to welcome and acknowledge the indigenous territory, the Treaty 6, and respect histories, languages, and cultures of the First Nation, Métis, Inuit, and all the indigenous peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant country, Canada. I want to say them Tansi, which is hi in one of the Cree languages, and also Tarlasam in my language, Tamasha. I want also to acknowledge the territory where I am from. That's from Sahel and Sahara regions of Africa. For those are good in geography, it's an area between the West and North Africa. It's a zone and a territory which was split due to the colonization. One of the things we inherited from the colonization was that our people find themselves split into 5 different countries, Algeria, Burkina Faso, Libya, Mali, and Niger. So I want to acknowledge my ancestors in that territory. I also want to acknowledge Mother Earth and all the elements upon Mother Earth, the living and non-living, like our mountains, deserts, rivers, and all the elements, living and non-living, as I said. But also, I want to acknowledge all our friends, indigenous and non-indigenous, who have been part of the Aramat project, but also who sorry for my English, who work with us daily for the right of indigenous peoples. Sorry, I just have to find myself in this tech. So, but also I want to acknowledge the people who contributed to the Aramat project. Because today I will focus on that project, but I cannot at all pretend that this is my project. This is a collaborative project. I want also to thank the people who are here, and especially the Alberta Council for Global Cooperation for having me, in particular the 2 amazing women, Hope Salim and Rumbi, Zineiba, who made such amazing work on getting me here, but also under the leadership of Leah. I'm delighted also to see that indigenous peoples are part of, and the focus on indigenous peoples is done under this, in this conference today. I'm so sorry because I'm not able to navigate this tech, okay, here. I'm not familiar with that. Okay, no, it's not working. Okay, let me try on this way. Exactly. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm delighted that it is now a practice in your annual conferences to have a focus on indigenous speakers, but also on indigenous perspectives. We cannot reach needed transformation nor inclusion and innovation if we stay in the beaten track. The worsening climate change events at every corner of the globe, we are listening now and seeing what is happening in Pakistan, but just a few weeks ago, it was here in Canada that we was seeing damages and a lot of consequences of climate events. So that's need transformative solutions. And the Aramat project aims to such solutions. That's why I chose to introduce you today the project as an example of Indigenous Led Innovations for health and well-being of all. So what is Aramat project and why do we have two different titles? As I started to talk about it, biodiversity is declining at an alarming rate, with impact being significant for Indigenous peoples in Canada, but also elsewhere in the world, and not only for Indigenous peoples, but to all the living and non-living. The health of ecosystems on which we and all other species depend on is deteriorating more rapidly than ever, and we are eroding the very foundation of our economies, livelihood, food security, health, and quality of life worldwide, stated by the IPBS, which is the Intergovernmental Platform for Biodiversity, Ecosystems, and Services. And Indigenous peoples bear, unfortunately, a disproportionate burden of poor health, not only in Canada, when you look into data when they exist, also globally. And socio-political marginalization globally, particularly in areas where they have poor access to land and resources, is demonstrated. Currently, global response, we can see it, is insufficient, and we need to restore and protect nature. Indigenous peoples, including hunters, fishers, herders, and forest users, own, occupy, or use 25% of the world's surface area, with approximately 80% of Earth biodiversity located within those areas. And let me explain you then now how Aramat project was born. So in response to what you can see here, the New Frontier Research Fund of Canada, they did a call for application for funds, for research funds in their area of transformation. So a group of, or if I can say a network of researchers, and I'm happy that I'm talking about that here on Treaty 6, but also at the University of Alberta, because it was born here, the idea of Aramat. So when we saw the call for proposals of this new research fund, we were one of the first cohort of this fund. So we gather as Indigenous knowledge keepers, researchers, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to put together an application, a project that we first called Strengthening Health and Well-Being through Indigenous-Led Conservation and Sustainable Relationships with Biodiversity. But as we was drafting the proposal, making it more something living and in which we really believe, and we were really hoping, because it was just a proposal, but for us it was what we were thinking, what we were hoping to see. So we said, as we are drafting it, why not really practicing all what we were saying, even at the proposal drafting level or stage. Then we went back to our because we have an advisory circle. We have also indigenous elders, youth, people who hold indigenous traditional knowledge. So we went back to them to choose a name for the project that really capture the whole vision of the project. That's how, after consulting linguistics elders and diverse people, we get to the name Aramet, or the concept of Aramet for our project, which comes from, as introduced a bit by Hope, it comes from my language, Tamashaq, and it means a health, a state of health and well-being shared not only by environment, but also by people and animals. So in my language, Tamashaq, you cannot just ask about the health of people. When you ask about the health of people, you have to also ask about the health of the land, the health of other species, including, for example, the camels, which has a very central role in our livelihood. So that's how the name Aramet came, and how it, our also paths to get to this name. So fortunately, we was awarded with the fund. As I said, we cleared all the steps, and now it's a project. But how this project is functioning, because we are 6 co-principal investigators, all of us based in Canada, from from coast to coast to coast, and from north and south, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. We are equally represented in the co-principal investigators level. But this still illustrates a kind of centrality or a lack of decentralization of the project. But no, the funds are not sitting centrally in Canada or in the hands of 6 people who we are, myself, Danica Billy Little Child from Musquatchie in Treaty 6, Brenda Parley from the University of Alberta, Murray Humphrey from McGill University, Sherry Pictou from Dalhousie, who is Mi'kmaqi, and John O'Neill from Simon Fraser University. But the project is just led by us, or co-led by us. We have 140 Indigenous led projects that will be funded through this fund. And the Indigenous peoples who are part of the project are coming from 140 different and diverse ecoregions, as I started to talk about them, like the deserts, the mountains, Amazon, Andes, here in Canada, from different parts of the country. So the team also is made of non-Indigenous peoples, from researchers to administrators. Like, we need all the disciplines together. We are about 24 scientific diverse disciplines, but also people coming from different fields of Indigenous traditional knowledges, because this project is also has as one of the major objectives to elevate Indigenous people's traditional knowledges. We know that most of our traditional knowledges are transmitted orally, and we will need to have them documented, to have them put together to evidence the research, but also, as I'm going to talk about that later, to also be a rationale or evidence on which the policy change take information from. So with the 140 place-based projects from the 7 social cultural regions of indigenous peoples, we will also have, pathways of global transformations. So we know that the health, as I said, and the health and Aramat, which is here at the center of our project, is also related to over a theme, like it's a very broad and holistic concept. But in order to be able to really work and deliver by the 6 years length of the project, we decided to, after for sure discussing about 300 hours together with our partners, indigenous partners across the globe, who are part of the Aramat project, we came out with 10 focus areas, which we called the 10 transformation pathways. All of them are interrelated, and all of them contribute to the Aramat itself. So for example, if I take the T1, which is strengthening indigenous food systems, we know that the food system is influenced by other things. It's not only going to the grocery or being able to go to grocery. You have to be able you have to have cash to buy the grocery. You have to be able to make the right choices on what you put in your basket. And all these kind of things, we call them like the undermining of indigenous food systems in the case of T1. And we know that there are other stressors and influencers on T1, like the colonization, the ability for people to access to land or not. So all these elements also are part of the discussions of the pathways. So now we already started, because the project is less than a year length, but we started the discussion within the pathways. And each of the pathways will develop its own strategic plan to reach the goals, like the overall goals of the Aramat project by, as I said, the 6 years. If we we cannot only focus on the problems, like when I say reestablishing healthy relationship or reaching a state of health, of human health. We know that, for example, when I got in my clinic, in my clinic practice, a kid coming for example, malnutrition, I can prescribe to that kid complementary with all the elements the kid needs. But is that solving this kid problem? Can I say, oh, I healed him, it's okay, I gave the right treatment, and I will not be worried about his malnutrition issue? No, I cannot, because until I didn't get to really solve the roots of the issue that kid is facing, what led to the malnutrition, like do his parents access to, for example, as we talk about Timbuktu farming or herding, do they have still animals from which they can have milk to feed that kid or not. Do they know or do they still practice the traditional way of living? And all these kind of elements will really influence the real treatment of this kid, not only the end of the chain, which is giving to that kid treatment for the current and visible problem. So we have to really focus and try to go and consider the issues we see holistically if we are really sincere in resolving them. So that is the same like for them to consider all the 10 pathways. So that are the current discussions we have within our 10 pathways. They are also areas where researchers, no matter they are indigenous or not, get together to learn from each and others, but also to complement their knowledge. Because, for example, if I take the case of my friends in Bolivia, like they develop a lot of ways, the women, they develop a lot of ways of sharing the food, which comes from their traditional way of sharing, but also of caring for each and others. But these women may need help from, for example, a social science researcher to put together, to help them to develop tools, methodological toolboxes for them to be able to transmit this knowledge to the younger generations. So together, within the same pathway, this is what we see, the kind of conversation we see, and the kind of materials that will come after the 6-year working together. And that will also contribute to the place-based research to start and to go well, because we need all of us, we need all the skills. With the current issues we face, we cannot afford to leave any opportunity or any knowledge away. We need all the knowledges together. So that is how we thought about the pathways and how they can really be a space for knowledge synthesization. Now, as I thought a bit earlier about that, we really want transformation, and the transformation cannot happen only by putting together research papers. We need transformation that impact policy. We need indigenous knowledge to be part of the references or rationale for decision making. We need to facilitate deeper learning and change in the current systems, to be able to find room for other ways of thinking, and to catalyze the creation of new systems of decision making. So these are the main objectives of our project. We know that so far, most of the policy decisions are made from the scientific evidence. We want indigenous people's knowledges and local knowledges to be part of that. And as I said earlier, it's not by chance that the most preserved biodiversity is remaining on indigenous land. So we have a lot to learn from there. And we want them to be to contribute to the change of policy on biodiversity and health, and not seeing the decisions on biodiversity and health made in silo. We want people to gather on the same table and to think these issues collaboratively, in partnership and in a holistic manner. And that will happen through political commitment and changes at all levels, non-profit organizations, education institutions, and also to be now something like becoming systematic, like we always have to think. It's not only filling forms or filling up by presence of one person, but really practicing it, making it something that works, that we evaluate, like we question ourselves about it. Do I really involve the indigenous people from the land where I am from? What can I learn from them? Do I really involve the women, the youth, the people from diverse gender identity? Do I really do that, or it's just on my paper? What I have as metrics to measure that I am practicing that. So that's what is always coming back in our thinking as we are implementing the Aramat project. And that is also what brings me to to our governance structure. So we thought about a governance model which is unique, where everyone has her voice and also can voice those who don't have voice. Like when we talk about Mother Earth, the only thing now, most of us, the anthropocentric people, can hear is only when there are damages, like when the street is flooded and I cannot go through, or when I'm seeing smoke that preventing me to breathe normally. That's only the language I can hear from Mother Earth. But what can I do for Mother Earth? So there are part of our people also in our network who speak for Mother Earth, not only speak when it's late or when it's terrible for us, but in prevention also. So we need all the voices of those who carry their voice, but also those who carry the voice of unvoiceless people. Hopefully I pronounce it well, because my English is still in progress. So that is how we taught an ethical space also. We developed our principle of working together that we submitted also. We all contributed to these principles, but we also submitted them to all our partners, indigenous and non-indigenous, for their approval. So they all find themselves in those principles of working together. And if I can say, like, we always are guided by reciprocity, by caring for each and other, and for equal voice of all. We, in our meetings or in our work, when we work together and get together, we always ensure that the indigenous peoples speaks first. And we insist in that, because sometimes they found themselves in spaces where they are forgotten, where they have to really fight to get voice. But in our working spaces, we really know and we practice that they are the ones who speaks first, and then not being exclusive, all our memberships and our collaborators have will speak. Like we ensure that everybody will speak, but with the priority of our indigenous partners. Our project management also has foundation on our ethical space. Everyone has to report to everyone, and any decision made get in somehow the input of all the partnership, as illustrated by this our very first draft project management graphic, where I can explain some of the elements. For example, these are our 10 pathways themes, but these 10 pathways themes are not very different from our Indigenous led place-based projects teams, because each pathways team is made of the Indigenous led place-based project teams that are interested in the same team. So they are somehow interrelated, because the membership is the same, but at a smaller level. Then we have an advisory circle also made of indigenous elders, indigenous people, not elder in age, but elder because they have the wisdom. They might be very young, or they might just have incredible or amazing work and experience in a specific area, like our friend Amaranta, who is a mujer from Zapoteca in Mexico. So she has a very big experience in working with people from gender diversity, like the trans people. So she is well respected on her work on that, and she sits in our advisory circle because of that. So we have the advisory circle, which is very reachable, and to which each of us can go, and we have yearly meeting with the advisory circle, but when there is an issue arising, also we can reach them easily. We have an executive committee, and we have also asked, as I said, the principal investigators. We are the leaders. We were the leaders, but we are not the decision makers for the project. All the decisions are made from all, because before a decision is made, we got the input of all our membership. And for the management, also we have a team of management of the project and operation team, and all of them report to the principal investigators, who also get in touch with the advisory circle on any major decision. So all of us are interrelated, and we always sit and think about how the people was consulted according to principles like the United Nations Declaration on the Right of Indigenous Peoples, the free, prior, and informed consent, but also on specific ways of making decisions from each place-based project. So it's very complex. It's ambitious as a project, but if we don't do it, if we don't show the path, if we fear to go to new ways or innovative ways, we will not see changes. So we have to dare. So I'm glad to introduce you our team here, which is made by, as I said, Indigenous peoples from every corner of Canada, but also Indigenous people from the 7 social cultural regions of Indigenous peoples across the globe. The majority is from Canada, because this is a Canadian federal fund. So 50% of our fund will go to Indigenous peoples projects in Canada, and 50% will go to the other regions. Because yes, this is a Canadian fund, but we also have to keep in mind that the biodiversity loss and health and well-being is not a matter only of Indigenous peoples in Canada, or of Indigenous peoples across the globe. It's an issue for all of us as human beings, but also as element of the Mother Earth. So in closing, and thank you so much, I have been so long, but in closing, I just want to remind you and quote our elder, Wakmagusi Cree elder, who is reminding us, if the land is not healthy, how can we be? So we have to always think that way about health and well-being, and stop focusing on our own health as human beings, detached from others, because the reality is catching us. Uh, if I ask here, who from in this room has not someone very close who deal with environmental diseases like asthma, COVID, or any other allergies? Can someone in this room raise his or her hand or their hand to say that they don't have any closing relative who deal with such issues? And even when I speak about unknown diseases or very complex diseases, and this is just how we see it, but the alarm was ringing for years and years about the need to really focus and think health in a very holistic manner, because we cannot afford to just focus on our health as human. Otherwise, we are lying to ourselves, and we will pay for that today, but also the next generation. We are leaving them very bad heritage. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tanu Merthulen.